Crafting a pitch to present a startup to investors is not an easy task, even if you have a killer idea and high-tech stuffs. You have to be clear and concise to effectively grab your audience attention. There are things to say and things to avoid. If you are familiar with the TV series Shark Tank, you know what I'm saying. Watching this TV program or other related podcasts can teach you a great deal because you can see real entrepreneurs pitch to real investors. The Pitch is a podcast from Gimlet Media that features entrepreneurs in need of venture funding as they pitch to a live panel of investors. Right now, you can listen to 100 episodes of this podcast on Spotify and subscribe for more. We went one step further and used NLP and AI tools to find out what are the most repeated words and phrases on this podcast. If there is a word or phrase repeating in most of the episodes, this means that you probably need to mention it in your pitch or you will hear it from the investors. After doing some coding, analysis, and manual grouping, we were surprised by the results. If you want to find out what are the most repeated words and phrases in startup pitches, what they mean and how important they are, continue watching this video. Don't forget to subscribe for more tech debates. Out of the 100 episodes of the Pitch podcast, 35 of them has the transcription. We had to download the rest of them and use AI tools to transcribe them into text. You can use the TPSpeech package for that. Then we had to prepare the text files by removing the unwanted words and phrases. We noticed that there are some repeating words like the name of the speakers, the name of the show and its producers, and words like angel investor, venture capital, venture capitalist, etc. The stop words, punctuations, and numbers all have to be removed in order to only analyze the important words. We used some Python scripts and packages for that. If you are interested in the process, tell us in the comments to create another detailed video on it. With that said, let's get to the results. Let's see the most used words and phrases and see what they mean. But first, let's hear from our sponsor, DigitalOcean. With DigitalOcean Cloud Services, you can host your website or app on DigitalOcean Droplets in the geo region of your choice. If you need a 60-day credit of $100 to test DigitalOcean Cloud products, use the link in the description. The most repeated word is no. Seems like you have to know a lot of things, or the investors want to know about a lot of things and they will ask you questions. Know what, know how, know when, know where, know who, question, answer question. These are some of the other combinations. Company, business, product, brand, market, service, industry, community, software, portfolio, company portfolio, competition. These are some of the things that you should know about and will describe. Founder, team, entrepreneur, black founder, female founder, nice to meet, co-founder. Don't forget to introduce yourself and your team. Problem, idea, personal story, solving problem, building sustainable. What is the problem that you're solving? Do you have a story for that? Is there any personal connection or background? Customer, user, retail, store, online, shop, consumer. The investors don't want to only know who the founder is. Presenting who your customers and users are is also very important. Do you sell at the stores, to other retailers, or online? New, great, big, new product, first time, big business, professional, solve problem, really big, great idea, one of the best, better product, different product. Investors hear these words a lot, and they might be skeptical. Try not to double down too much on this. People is another word that is repeated a lot. People, data, many people, a lot of people. People know, average woman, average American. If you're going to talk about people or your users, don't just assume and claim things. Do you have some stats and numbers to back you up? Present your market research data. Business model, use case, vendors, make money, market size, value prop, product market, pricing model, competitive advantage, value proposition. If you've invested time completing your PMC, you already know how to describe your business model and how to answer the investors' questions. Employee, revenue, price points, revenue stream, unit economics, per employee, employee per, run rate, dynamic pricing, million revenue, gross margin, per unit, paying employee, sale process. How much do you spend? How many staffs do you have? How you make money and how you price your product or service is also important. Investors look into the long-term sustainability of your business by looking at your cash flow and revenue. Month over month, per month, active user, mobile app, monthly subscription, download app, monthly active user, early adopter, million downloads, new user, renew membership, purchase, fulfillment rate, using product, active daily user, beta customer, item per order. Talk about the users and stats yourselves. Investors love to see solid numbers. Million, money, need. $1 million, $1 billion, fund, raising money, billion, get money, invested million. $1,000, raising million, convertible notes, $500,000, get million, million buck, raising $1 million, I owe you. There will be a lot of talk about numbers and money. How much do you need? Fee, paid acquisition, sale, customer acquisition cost, sale team, dollar per, customer acquisition cost, customer retention, acquiring customer, acquiring user, acquisition strategy. How much is your CAC? How much do you spend to keep your customers? Do you have a sales team? How are you going to acquire new users? These are some of the common questions the investors ask. Social medium, influencer, direct consumer, search engine, network effect, social network. How are you going to acquire new users and customers? Are you using social media effectively? Trying to figure, makes sense, never heard, wrap my head around, excited to hear, super clear. Are you explaining things well enough? Try to be super clear, or let the investors wrap their head around the topic and ask you further questions. Be patient. You don't need to explain everything in one go. Don't be static like a teleprompter. Try to be responsive. Risk, pain points, really hard, find a way, big vision, ultimate vision, biggest challenge. Don't be afraid to talk about your risks, pain points, challenges, and your long-term goals. A flat road to success is too good to be true. Make sure, really excited, really cool, great company, relentlessly optimistic, great advice, really interesting. They may give you some advice or praise you or your idea. Use the feedback you receive from the investors. Size, valuation, million valuation. They say size matters, and your stats show there will be a lot of talk about size, whether it's market size or the size of your company or even your product. seed, raise money, friend, family, nonprofit, revenue-based financing, due diligence, Kickstarter, how much money, next round, earliest stage, bridge round, term sheet, seed stage, phase 1, lead round, friend and family round, family money, pre-seed company, find lead investor, committed rounds. At which stage are you? How much have you raised so far? What is your current valuation? Have you done your due diligence? Money back, payback, need money too. Money helped. Get money back. Need a scale, return rates. How this round of investments is going to help you scale. Do you need to pay back some amounts to your team or yourself? How the investor is going to get his or her money back. Crypto, cryptocurrency, blockchain, platform, machine learning, code, virtual reality, big data, SaaS business, collect data, tech stack, supply chain, facial recognition, artificial intelligence. Are you using high-tech stuffs? These are the common buzzwords. Sometimes you need to talk about the inner workings of your business and get into the details. Try not to go too deep, although some investors love that, especially those who were tech entrepreneurs themselves. Actually, blah blah. Don't wait too long thinking. The pitch stage is not the best place to come up with the answers. Try to look confident and prepared. FDA approval, clinical trial. Do you need a license or a permit for your product? When you hear investors talk about these things, they're concerned about your time to market and the obstacles ahead. A lot of money. Biggest problem. Wrong. Subject matters. Big problem. Big bet. Clear answer. Basically impossible. Biggest thing need. Answer everything. Attitude to art. Instead trying. Frankly speaking. Build better. Don't get offensive or defensive. Sometimes you just need to agree or disagree. Most of the times, the investors try to evaluate your personality. Deal. Opportunity. Close the deal. Try to close the deal if possible, and don't waste an opportunity. But don't underestimate yourself and your idea. Come back. Big enough. Really focus. Don't get disappointed if they say that you need to come back. A lot of times you can make things work with a strong comeback. Sometimes you just need to focus on some of your metrics and ask for VC money again. That's it for now. We may do a similar thing for the Shark Tank TV series in the future if you're interested. Don't forget to subscribe for more tech debates like this one. If you want to buy our merch, visit our website techdmg.com.